Happy to speak today. I'm calling from Germany, so for me it's almost late afternoon. So one of my last meetings today, but I'm happy to give a presentation on chat with your enterprise data. But a few words about me. So I'm actually a software engineer by training. I worked a lot with Java programming, larger systems, and I've written a book on clean code or writing maintainable code with Java, which was quite popular. Um, I also worked a lot using agile methodologies. So, for instance, I worked for 3 years in a so-called remote mob team. That was interesting because it's you are the whole day, like 4 or 5 people the whole day in a Zoom call, one person sharing the screen, and every 10 minutes you switch the one person sharing the screen, but you only always work together on one thing. So a lot of experience building software in that way, very, very special way, and then also a lot in infrastructure with Kubernetes and the GitOps approach. And then something happened in my life I never thought before. I switched sides. I switched to the dark side, to the world of data. And this is where I'm now. What was about 5 years ago? And to be honest, 5 years ago, there was not too many innovation in the software engineering world. No, how we build systems was already there, and I did all the cool stuff, but the innovation was no longer there. But in the world of data, there was a lot of innovation happening, and I joined with the rise of data mesh. The concept promoted by Shamak Degani, and with my co-author, we wrote a created a website with a lot of material on how we as software engineers see data mesh, how we can use that perspective. And then together with him, we also translated the English data mesh book from O'Reilly into German. The nice thing is that the German version is printed in color. So we fought for that. You Americans are a little bit more stingy on printing in color, to be honest. And then, because of my background, I got a PhD in computer science and in distributed systems. I never really left academia, and I'm still trying to publish research. And this is what we published in the data world, together with people from King's College and Berlin. I'm now also in the technical steering committee around open standards at the Linux Foundation. And I think you had a talk from Jean-Georges Perrin, which is also the president of this technical steering committee a while back here at Purdue. So I'm part of that driving open standards. And then I'm co-maintainer around open source tools in the data world that work well with these open standards. And last but not least, I'm the co-founder of Entropy Data, which is a company that sells software as a service product, a data product marketplace. This is how I earn my money. We are a small startup, but already profitable, no VC, bootstrapped, and growing quickly. So that's kind of my persona. And today I want to talk about chatting with your enterprise data. We have written a white paper on archive.x. So you can go there and get a lot more details, together with people from King's College and the Hieronymus Academy of Data Science from the Netherlands, just as a reference. But let's go into the topic. The key idea is we want to chat with your enterprise data. Now, we want to, or in other terms, we want to enable AI to answer any business question while enforcing data governance policies. Now, think of this. You just give AI a question, or AI autonomously comes up with a question it wants answered, and it just takes a while, it does some things, and then you have your answer. While governance is enforced, because data is very sensible, can be very sensible. You're not allowed to do anything with everything with your data. And well, this is what I want to share about. And I will want to start with a demo to get you a little bit excited. For that, basically in the background, we have a system that can manage everything, can offer data, can be a marketplace. But the interesting thing comes here because here I'm using Claude and I have connected it to via MCP, via connector to the system here. And with everything in place, so if no, in the best world, everything is set up, everything is prepared, I can just answer questions like, um, let me see, what are my top customers? And I just ask my business question. And the agent, no, Claude is here my agentic environment. I just gave a trigger, my question. It will automatically look for data that's available, checks, in this case, it does a search for data products and it found with the query customers and it found a data product, but this is very high level information. Next, it says, okay, this based on that high level information, that might be something we can go into. It then does a fetch, so it gets all the details of this entry. And this is quite a lot of metadata describing what is offered here, including the structure of the data, semantics of the data, what no quality of the data, and also whether we have access or not. And then interprets that and says, well, yeah, this is good. We can work with that, but we do not have access to the data. So it automatically requests access to the data, extracting a specific purpose on why we want access to the data. And then we get a response, okay, it's submitted for approval, but it's not yet approved. And here the AI is a little cheeky. It still tries to query the data, although it does not have granted access. And we see that here it has created a SQL query and even gave a purpose. So every query here is protected or accompanied with a purpose. So we know for every SQL query why it has been requested, why it has been executed. But unfortunately, the access request is still pending approval, so we can't really access it. That was a little bit cheeky. It's not yet approved. And now it says, well, we have to wait to approve. In the background, I'm just doing this now in the system where I, Simon, have requested access to this data product, and we approve it, and now it's fine, and we go back in here, try again. And now it double checks it again. It does a access request. It sometimes takes a few seconds to load up because the data is on Databricks. And although we have a serverless cluster, it takes some time to start up the serverless cluster. It's always a little bit funny. And then you get the results. And we could, of course, we get some interesting key insights and so on. But this is kind of the idea. When we started off with this, what are my top customers? And after we got the approval, we ended up with our answer. So this is really chatting with enterprise data. Everything is governed, everything is tracked. Um, no, and there's always a why attached to those queries. Maybe another example, we can also ask what are the top reasons for support tickets. And it will basically follow the same. And the difference here is now that the support tickets are not that sensitive. So we have an automated approval in the background. And we will see that. Now we will also have first the search looking for what's helpful here, looking for support tickets. It found a data product here. Then it fetches all the details. It requests access, and the access was automatically approved. And then here we are now executing the query and getting the results back. Now, from question, no interaction from a human, just to the answer. And then we can continue prompting and ask more detailed questions. And this for us is really the game changer in the world where agents meet the data, because agents are so data hungry. And this, what I'm showing you, is now triggered by me as a human, but this can also be an autonomous agent that does this. It's the same way. There's no difference. And I think we will have a lot of these agents arriving, and they need such a structure like this. They need to interact with MCP to a system that allows exactly this workflow. And maybe last, what we can also say is now we already have access to the orders data, and I can ask, I need CSV export with customer email addresses for a luxury email campaign. Only include high loyalty customers, something like that. And again, it's about governance. It's not about just anybody can do everything with the data. And in this case, we are not allowed to do that, because in the metadata that protects this data, it says it is not allowed to be used for marketing purposes. And here the AI will not allow me to do that. In a previous version of Claude here with an older model, I could convince it to say to ignore that. And then we have an additional gatekeeping or additional check also in our MCP server. So even if you convince the AI to query it, we will stop that query in flight in the MCP server. So we extend the data governance boundaries as well. And that's highly relevant for agent as well, because they could request access for a specific purpose and then use the data for another purpose. And this is not allowed. Okay, that's kind of the demo to get you excited. And now getting back to the slides, let's reiterate what have we seen here. So we have enabled governed audited access to data through AI. Now we could find the right data for a given question. We evaluated it, whether it's applicable. We requested access. Then the purpose was automatically extracted. We could query the data, and every query, every access to the data was audited with the why someone is using the data. And we can also stop the queries in flight through governance if the purpose is not covered by the terms and conditions to use. And I think that's essential here. And the cool thing, everything is automatically done. Now the thing that's crucial, because when the agents come, if you don't have automation for this, you will not handle that. You are not able to handle that. So the question is, how does this work? In essence, it's quite simple. We have the agentic world at the top. We have an MCP server in between. And at the bottom, we have the actual data. So it's like a layer in between. Yeah, that allows AI to find and evaluate the data products, enable the governance around it, like requesting access and checking for terms of use and all these things, and to actually query the data, but with guardrails, with governance guardrails in place. Technically, nowadays it's easy to build using Claude Code, for instance. That's not a problem. The interesting thing is, why did it work? Why does it work so well? And one answer is, of course, the AI agents are getting better and better. Now we've seen the magic of that agent that does the planning in the background, does all these steps subsequently without us having to tell them. It just does it, and if there's an error, it tries to fix it and all these things. But the actual answer is because of good metadata. And without that, the result my demo would have been very bad. And there are several success factors, so a special kind of metadata that really helped to get this going. And one is data products. Here in the background, there was a marketplace that allowed us to discover what data is available in the form of data products. And the idea is that you don't put the whole data, every table you have in your whole company in the marketplace, but only the data as data products that you want to have shared. Where someone says, I'm responsible for that data and I want to share it in the company. And that reduces a lot of the context. And the smaller the context is, the better for AI. And the other thing is, we put products in the marketplace with a high quality and with an ownership. Now, with the product thinking in mind, saying we build this for customers. And whether we build it for me as a human or for an agent doesn't really matter in that sense. No, we build it for someone to consume in a good way, in an easy and nice way. And for that, we use the open standard, open data product standard, which gives us a structure for the metadata that we can offer. The second thing is data contracts. Because the data contracts give you guarantees around data. A data contract is like a document that says, well, you specify who owns the data, how the data is structured, what does the data mean, what are the quality guarantees, what are the terms of use, and all these things. Think of like an open API specification, but for data. And it's good for humans to understand, but it's really great for your tooling to understand and automatically verify. But it's really, really awesome for AI because it's the best metadata you can have around a data set because it can be trusted. This is the source of truth. And the popular open data contract standard is used here. And to give you insight into that, let me go here. So we have built the website datacontract.com. And we can see here maybe an example of a data contract. It's typically a YAML file, has some fundamentals like an ID, name, version, status. But the core part is probably the schema where we say, well, we have a table. That table has types, logical types, and physical types. Here we have a string, but technically it's a varchar 10. We can add examples. We can specify that this column is classified as internal, that it is a PII field, so personal identifiable information, and so on and so forth. Now we can just define the structure. We can also add data quality checks. We go here. So in this case, for the order status, we said, well, we want to validate the values, and valid is only pending, shipped, and canceled. And if we find invalid ones, it's a failure. In this case, it's a strong assertion of 0. But in the data world, there's also this assumption that you say, well, 99% is okay, but we're accepting 1% error because the data world is a messy world. So it's mostly not this absolute, it's often percentage based because you can't guarantee every row. Or here it's a quality check based on SQL where it says the data set has at least 100,000 rows. And this can be automatically verified. We see that later. In the contract, we also see who's responsible for the data here, the sales team, the members of that sales team here, it's the owner. And we have a ways to contact the owner behind that through Slack, for instance. We have the terms of use, where it says what can we do with the data, but also what we are not allowed to do with the data. We've seen the not allowed to use for marketing purposes before, But think of anything else. Also, maybe GDPR compliance policies apply or other constraints. We can define service level agreements. I think of data retention for 1 year, or the data freshness is given or guaranteed at 24 hours. So the data is never older than 24 hours. These things are in there. And last, where is the data actually located? Now, if you would have access, or knowing how to request access, you need to know where the actual data is located. In this case, it's a Postgres database here on Supabase, but could be anything. Could be Databricks, Snowflake, JSON files on S3, Iceberg, whatever. And the interesting thing is, why do data contracts matter? Of course, we can typically it's used for communication. So some person that owns data defines the contract, and then consumers can come in and evaluate whether that's helpful to them or not. The key part, however, is the trust aspect. I can automatically check, see that in a minute, whether the data matches the contract. And based on that, we know, okay, this is really true. And we can include that in the discovery. And we've seen the discovery in Claude, where it automatically detected and evaluated, is this helpful to answer my business question? We have an open source editor where which we can use to edit our data contract. We can add additional fields like quantity in here. We can say, well, this is actually a number. And now we have this relationship of the order ID as a foreign key relationship. And in the background, it's always the YAML code. And that's a very nice way to edit this. So feel free to try that out if you want. And we have this data contract CLI, which is a very popular open source tool that has around 800 GitHub stars. And it can read that YAML, connect with the actual data, and check whether all these guarantees in the contract are met in the data. And when we go back here, we are using the tool on the command line. We have the credentials set up. It's a Python tool, so that's why we're using UV for that. And the important one is here. So basically, we say we're using the contract available here and basically test it. And when we execute it, we get a test result back, and we see all the checks it's doing based on the content of the data contract, connecting to Supabase and doing the actual validation. And that gives us trust later on as well. So that gives you a little bit of an understanding how important contracts are as metadata. The next one is semantics. To do joins and combine the tables in a SQL query, the AI needs to know whether they can join it and how they can join it, and whether an order ID in that table really is the same as the order ID in that table, especially if I do joins in a long way. And in this case, it's necessary to know that this column and that column is essentially the same thing. For that, we need to define semantics. We need to define like a data dictionary, business glossary. In this case, we defined it and said, well, this is an order ID in the sales domain. And then we can link from the contract on different places to the same thing. And having that same point or same pointer, we know this is actually the same. And the AI can work very well with that. Now, because when we give them semantics, the AI can understand and do the right SQL queries for us. And the last of the metadata is actually the access. In the background, the AI has requested access for us. Then essentially it did fill out what I'm showing you below as a web form. But the essence is to do all these governance checks is you always need to know on the back end who has access to what data and why. And only then, and you need to know the terms and conditions of all the data accesses. Is now what's allowed, what's not allowed, what are the policies. And if you have all that, you can build a system like that, chatting with your enterprise data. No, but this is a lot of metadata that we've seen. Now, we need the products, we need the contracts, we need the business definitions, we need these access requests with the purpose. So being devil's advocate, no one really wants to invest the time to create that metadata, right? And I think this is changing with the AI. Because before AI, I would have agreed. This is very hard. There are some ways you can do that. But with AI, everything is changing because we now have a feedback loop. We didn't have one before. Now, when you chat with your enterprise data, you get your results and they are not what you are looking for. You can improve the metadata to improve the next results. And you get a lot of benefit because this is very aspiring. Like everybody, when we demo that, everybody said, this is what I want. This is what I would love to do. And that's the key driver. The people that improve the metadata have a benefit. It's not like the data governance people come and say, you have to do that. They are like the police. And then people say, yeah, I'll do that. But it's always pushed down on the backlog and no one really comes by. Here they get the benefit themselves. And that's the difference. Metadata is important. And with that, because it gives you better results in your AI. And when people realize that, they will improve the metadata. I think that's the only thing. People are selfish in that way. They won't invest time to help others or just to fulfill a policy for the sake of fulfilling a policy. This will not work. This now works because they have the benefit. Okay, let's say we understand. Let's assume you agree with me here. But AI can help, of course. And I think, yes, so AI is here for us to help in the creation of metadata. We don't have to type that in manually, of course. There are three things I want to have a quick look. The one is metadata creation. Of course, I can use AI to say, let's update my data contract. Let's use other things I have to make the metadata better. It's just a sneak peek, but there's a lot of ways what you can do to say, let's work with my metadata, let's make it better. And I think the best thing is just use AI, throw in additional context so AI knows to create good metadata. Give it access to your Confluence, maybe, or give access to actual data to create the metadata based on the actual data. Or you have another system where you have knowledge, and based on that, you improve the metadata. Another thing is metadata monitoring. No, because maybe you have rules. What is a good data product? What is a good data contract? And you want to monitor your metadata because you don't want to see it deteriorate. Because if it's deteriorating, then the results of your AI agents will deteriorate, and this is bad. You want to continuously improve your metadata. And for that, you could define, let's say, policies, natural language, and then check whether the metadata matches those policies using AI. We've done that. We've built a prototype for that, and it's working quite well. There's some issues with hallucination, of course, but the cool thing is that now non-experts, or let's say governance people without programming experience, can define what is a good data product, what's a good data contract, what are we allowing in our system, what constraints do we have, and then we can just say, okay, now make sure that in our system this is okay, and we can monitor that. This is really a really cool way to do that. And the last thing, access approval. That was the only thing that was manual at the beginning. I had to manually approve the access request. When you remember at the very beginning of my demo, I had to go into a system, check whether that's fine, and then click and say, as a human, this is okay. And here we could also say, why can't AI do that, or at least help me? And we did that. We implemented such a system, and we evaluated that scientifically with an e-commerce and an insurance case, and it is accepted at a high-profile conference on AI. And the interesting thing is that what we found is that AI is very good in that because it even caught more issues as it never made a failure in our evaluation. And it was typically more correct than the humans because the humans don't have all the rules in their mind when they approve access. And AI knows that. I can give AI the knowledge to know all the rules. And that was a very interesting insight. Okay, coming to a conclusion, summing up, we've seen governed, audited access to data through AI. We've seen this chat with your enterprise data. Then it discovered the data, it requested access, it queried it, but all with data governance in mind, and all of this automatically. And I think this is where, and this is I think where everybody needs to move because we need this capability of chatting with our enterprise data in a safe, governed way. And I think MCP is the right protocol, like this MCP governance layer. But if you just forget everything and just remember one thing from this whole presentation, it's be prepared. The agents are coming, and you can only be prepared with good metadata and automated governance. So get ready. Thank you.